U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, stirred up some controversy after suggesting it would be, quote, fine if Israel took over the entire Middle East.
The comments came during an interview with Tucker Carlson released on Friday. Carlson repeatedly grilled Huckabee on a number of topics during the more than 2-hour-long interview. Take a look at this exchange.
Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all of Jordan?
They don't want to take it over.
After some back and forth, Huckabee backtracked on those remarks a bit. Let's watch.
You just said it would be fine with you if the state of Israel took all of Jordan, all of Syria, all of Lebanon.
That's really not exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking,
Tucker.
is that what you said? I thought that's what you just said.
It was somewhat of a hyperbolic statement in that, if that's what you feel like that we're talking about, but it isn't. We're talking about this land that Israel, the state of Israel, now lives in and wants to have peace in.
Both Huckabee's comments quickly and Tucker's went viral and caused outrage from many on social media, even some world leaders. Joint statement released by more than a dozen nations condemned his remarks, saying they, quote, affirm their country's categorical rejection of such dangerous and inflammatory remarks, which constitute a flagrant violation of the principles of international law and the Charter of the United Nations, pose a grave threat to the security and stability of the region. These statements directly contradict the vision put forward by U.S. President Donald J. Trump, as well as the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, which are based on containing escalation and creating a political horizon for a comprehensive settlement that ensures the Palestinian people have their own independent state.
Online, there were similar reactions of backlash towards Huckabee, but there was also praise for how Carlson handled the interview, even from left-wing influencer Mehdi Hasan. He wrote on X, quote, I am not a fan of Tucker Carlson. I disagree a lot with Carlson, but as an interviewer, Carlson actually brilliantly asks follow-up questions and keeps going in a way that pretty much no U.S. TV interviewer has done with pro-Israel guests since October 7th, and Huckabee falls apart.
But journalist Glenn Greenwald blasted that post from Hassan, responding, so if I'm correctly understanding the brand new consensus of the luminaries of the DNC's left liberal faction, Tucker Carlson has unique value as both a virulent critic of bipartisan U.S. militaristic foreign policy and as someone whose stature in the American right enables him to adverseriously and relentlessly question pro-war conservative officials in a way few others in media would ever do. Who knew? Till about seconds ago, anyone saying this was viciously denounced by this same faction as a far-right fascist sympathizer. Here's what Glenn is saying, if that was confusing. Glenn is friendly with Tucker Carlson. Mm-hmm. Tucker Carlson, when he was on Fox, would have Glenn on to talk about U.S. foreign policy from a left or right populist, the anti-interventionist perspective. Mehdi Hasan and people like him were very critical of Glenn for playing ball with Tucker at all. So Glenn is now saying, well, it's a bit rich that you've come around to my way of thinking and saying, well, I don't agree with Tucker, but because I agree with him on this, he's worth, giving a little bit of applause for. Glenn is saying, that's what I was doing all along, and you attacked me viciously. And Mehdi is very vicious. So I agree with Glenn completely. In terms of the interview itself, I watched a lot of it. I didn't watch all of it. Look, Tucker is very agenda-driven at this point when it comes to this topic. He's gone further than I would go on this issue, and I, like him, was someone very willing to question American policy toward Israel, automatic support for Israel. I became very disenchanted with and distrustful of what the Israeli government was saying about what it was doing in Gaza. I'm certainly more toward Tucker's side of all of that than Mike Huckabee's side with respect to Gaza and a lot of that stuff. Similarly, I don't think, to the extent Huckabee was trying to justify the state of Israel on biblical grounds, I think that's very suspect and is not really persuasive. And that is very much part of the evangelical Christian perspective that Huckabee represents, whereas the right, the religious right, is increasingly motivated by a vision of Catholicism that doesn't care about that at all. So he's kind of not reading the room if he's trying to, and Tucker, knowing that's not persuasive, was pushing him that way to justify Israel's existence on like a biblical contract with God that is not persuasive to people on the right anymore. And Huckabee took the debate. What he should do is say that, look, we're not going to biblical grounds, but Israel is our friend and ally. And he did this a little bit. It's surrounded by hostile nations. Those nations are hostile to Israel, and they're hostile to the U.S. So, look, Israel has the land now. They took it. It's theirs now. That's not going away. We're not going back 60 or 80 years and undoing that. We should, and I wish people on the pro-Israel side would make this concession more often, that we need to find a way for the Palestinians to have a place of their own and to live in harmony with the Israelis and move toward peace. Obviously, that does not involve Israel ceasing to be a state. The idea that the Palestinians or Hamas have that they're going to conquer Israel and retake that land is nonsense. It's never going to happen. We're not going to undo the past. No land belongs to someone in perpetuity. There's such a thing as right by conquest. It's theirs now. That's done. Sorry, it's just done. Get over it. It's done. It's not because they deserve to have it or they were promised it by God. It's just theirs now. That's that. We have to find some other accommodation. And no, we don't want them to take over or conquer the entire Middle East. We should discourage any future military adventurism. Their country is theirs. Let's find a way productively forward. That was my long, long monologue on this subject. Thank you for listening. My apologies.
No, I'm sure there are a lot of people who agree with Huckabee out there. But, you know, the difference is that he's a U.S. ambassador to Israel. He has an official title. And so when you do podcasts and when you're out in the public sphere and you say things like this, even if you have an opportunity to correct it and say you were saying it kind of as a hyperbole or however he's using the excuse, the conversation is about modern international law versus religious text. Like international law always takes precedence, international agreements, treaties, recognition that we've already put in place as opposed to what your religious claims are. And I think that the fact that a U.S. ambassador was even comfortable just saying, well, you know, by the book of the Bible, you know, this is how it goes. It's like that would make people uncomfortable.
He didn't just say that. He did say the other things too, but Tucker was pressing him to go, are the Jews, or is the state of Israel as described in the Bible, is that even the modern state? And like, why are we even arguing about that?
Given the dismissive nature of everything, and that's not to have an oppression Olympics about whether Israel had the right to defend itself and whether the October terrorism attack was bad. It's to say
it was bad and they did
exactly.
To defend
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's not an oppression Olympics. Yeah. But the fact that the Palestinian people have felt largely dismissed. We've understood about claims of starvation and the fact that we've even heard our president say it would be nice over there to have it like a casino-style waterfront. But it's been disrespectful to people that you just saw during Ramadan are sitting outside on a large table looking at the ruins of their home with no help on how to rebuild it in the way that they want to. Like you said, it was decided upon 60, 80 years ago that this would be their land, this would be their land. So they need to continue to or start to rebuild in a way that's comfortable to the people that call that place home. So to hear a U.S. ambassador to that region in Israel say, well, they should, technically they should, that is discomforting to people that have already felt largely dismissed in this whole conversation that really are just innocent people that had nothing to do with Hamas that would like to rebuild their lives over there. And so Hamas is bad. No, the Palestinian people are not terrorists. They are people that lost their land due to Hamas's actions and a retaliation. And Hamas has been criticized. I've heard all of it, living underneath the buildings and the hospitals. But now we're at the rebuilding phase. America has committed millions and millions of dollars on their part and asked other nations to commit to rebuilding. And now we need to acknowledge what that looks like because the entire international community, for the most part, the large majority anyway, sees this as a two-state solution working best and recognizing Palestine as a state. But Mike Huckabee obviously does not. And so he's somebody who is an authority figure and on a huge platform and just saying, well, not only do I not recognize it, I think, technically that should all be Israel.
Well, the problem, though, I, in the abstract, support the Palestinians having their own state. But in practice, Hamas would be in charge of their state, and Hamas is still committed on paper to the destruction of Israel and to just, terrorism against the West and anyone who supports Israel. They would not have a democratic government. They would have another Islamic theocracy and a particularly violent and terroristic one at that. So given that that's what would happen if they did have their own state, I see why that's not something we can allow to happen. That's certainly not something Israel's going to allow to happen. We wouldn't either. If there was some breakaway segment of Canada that wanted to have its own state, and what we knew is that it would immediately establish a religious theocracy that would engage in violence against either us or Canada, we would say no. If they just wanted to set up a nice little democracy that had good trade relations, then I would say yes, fine. But it's because they're going to be, I mean, like the Palestinian people are, I know there are, I want for them self-determination, but and there are many Palestinians who I'm sure do not want to suffer under the authority of Hamas. But in reality, that's what's going to happen because enough of them do support Hamas or are embedded with Hamas, and that's unfortunate.
And I'm looking forward to hearing more developments from the Board of Peace, which has leaders from a majority of major countries on the board to move forward and figure out what happens in that territory. All I'm saying is that the number one and the precedent set by that board cannot be coming from Mike Huckabee and what his perspective is, because obviously his perspective is extremely skewed in this case, and we need a bunch of countries coming together to find out the best way forward for peace in that region.
I don't think it was a good idea for him to leave, to say it would be fine if Israel took over the whole Middle East, because they don't need any encouragement to start doing more attacking of Iran or anyone else. So that was not a wise comment. I think both sides were the Huckabee side was very frustrated with this interview because he went on like a 20-tweet rant
after this. Yeah.
I don't know what he thought was going to happen, but interesting stuff.
Here we are. We have more to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.